Even in exile, we continue to defend our Russian supporters in the international court across hundreds of political cases. This work refutes the myths of Putin's propaganda, which claims that Russian society always supported his policies. Hundreds of rulings in the reputable international court narrate the story of society's decade-long struggle against Putin. In March 2017, Alexei Navalny released an investigation into the corruption of Dmitry Medvedev, who was then the chairman of the federal government. The scale of bribes amassed over many years amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. Oligarchs were effectively bankrolling the country's top leadership. This investigation mobilized hundreds of thousands of people to protests in approximately 100 cities across Russia. The authorities prohibited citizens from exercising their right to peaceful protest. They detained individuals merely for being on streets and squares, or for holding placards and funny cardboard images of Dmitry Medvedev. To prevent the authorities from intimidating protesters, Alexei Navalny pledged to assist every unlawfully detained individual. He proposed appealing to the European Court of Human Rights. Even then, we knew that Russian courts would not protect our supporters, but it was crucial to prove that law and justice were on our side. Lawyers started assisting with appeals against illegal rulings. At that time, we also began helping to pay fines for those who received unlawful penalties. This became a tradition and a new standard for protests in Russia. Increasing number of our supporters who joined campaigns against Putin's regime, organized by Alexei Navalny. The geography of protests expanded and the number of participants grew. The authorities responded with increasing harshness, intensifying their crackdowns. Detentions and relatively modest fines gave way to arrests. Fines escalated from approximately 300 euros to around 3,000. But we continued our work until the very end. Even when the authorities labeled us as extremists and expelled us from the country, our supporters remained in Russia and continued protesting. They fought against Putin by participating in demonstrations and other public campaigns, and we organized and supported them for years. Only after Russia's exclusion from the European Court of Human Rights following the onset of the war did the pursuit of justice in courts lose all meaning. However, our portfolio still includes over 1,100 cases. We assisted our supporters in navigating all domestic legal instances and appealing to the European Court of Human Rights. We have already won the majority of these cases, securing victories in 980 of them. The remaining cases are still pending review. Currently, Putin's regime refuses to comply with the rulings of the European Court of Human Rights, and we are seeking ways to enforce these decisions for a total of almost 4 million euros in compensation for unlawful prosecution. This judicial campaign demonstrates that Russians have persistently and resolutely protested against Putin's regime. Civil society built an entire infrastructure of resistance. It continued to fight until the authorities shifted from months-long arrests and hefty fines to multi-year prison sentences. The cases we won prove that the repressions enabling Putin to maintain power have always been illegal. They expose the repressive nature of his rule and demonstrate that his authority lacks legal foundation. There is only force, which he uses to suppress any dissent. This story spans for 8 years. Nearly 1,000 victories in the international court through the text of judicial rulings illustrate how Russians resisted Putin's regime. The police unlawfully detained protesters who simply took to the streets peacefully to express their disagreement with the direction in which Putin was leading Russia. For years, the judicial system obediently issued unlawful convictions, showcasing its complete subservience to Vladimir Putin's policies. Our work clearly demonstrates that Russians are not accomplices, but victims and hostages of Vladimir Putin's regime. From 2017 until the war began in 2022, leaders of European countries and the United States periodically expressed concern over human rights violation in Russia. Yet, they then met with Putin and shook his hand. Meanwhile, Russian society resisted the growing pressure of the dictatorship. Despite each year, the stakes grew higher. Do not let Putin's propaganda deceive you. Russian society does not support Putin or his war. It is held hostage by him. We now have 1,000 pieces of evidence confirmed by the court. It is strange to reproach a hostage who has desperately resisted for being on the side of the aggressor. Subscribe to our channel, where we discuss the situation in Russia and society's resistance to Putin's regime. You can support our work and learn more about us on our website. There we detail how we counter Putin by pursuing his enablers, investigating their activities, and participating in political campaigns and protests within Russia.